Here we are. I finally did it. We have an opal nail, everyone. This has taken me way too long to do because I kept having to pick it up and put it back down again, which was a big mistake for this kind of nail because it was one of those 2 steps forwards, 1 step back kind of situations. There are so many different kinds of opal that also made it extremely hard to focus on what I wanted to do. So this is not, this is one little type of opal out of a sea of many of what these guys can look like. So just be aware of that. And my main goal in doing these was to try to figure out how to do a nail that had those flashes that opal can have and also has that depth that opal has. Instead of just smearing a bunch of glitter, like opalescent glitter on a nail, like I really wanted to try to see, obviously on a fingernail. So we're not, we don't have much room to work with here. Or depth, because you don't want a nail that's 1/4 of an inch thick. What can we do in that space as much as possible to get that kind of feeling, that watery, flashy feeling that opal has? This is the best I could do. I can't work on this anymore, people. It's killing me. I had to just call it. So here I'm just showing you some other examples of just changing a few little things in it, and you can get some different colored hues going on the bottom, those 4. I switched out sort of one of the base chromes to more of a mellow orange, and then you can kind of get it going in a whole different vein. So there's a lot of leeway, but the biggest thing is leaving clear open space in the nail and not overdoing everything. And that's super difficult to do. And you are just going to have to do it a lot, and then you will sort of get an idea of what you do and don't like after a while. And this is another trust the process kind of nail. Here. But right before we start, there's a few more of the wild amount of variations I had come up with along the way. I was doing a few that still had some of the matrix left on it, and I still really do like that. And I may do another video on that if I can stomach it after the torture of this one. We'll see. I really enjoyed opalized fossils. I found some that were shells and the fossilized opalized wood. So yeah, all those are super cool. So we'll see. I'm going to need a little break from the opal after this, but at least I'm crossing this off the list. And just to prove to everyone, that's not what opal looks like. Yeah, I bought some opal. So there's the opal I have, green and blue. I've also got the specimen grade. I got some of these too from a gem show that came into town. So yeah, that's opal. So I didn't just pull this randomly out of a hat and decide it was opal. I looked at actual stones, just so you know. Okay, this is the one we are going to do today. So let's finally get started with doing this opal nail. Our first step is to build our base textures. This is going to make the light be able to bounce off of all kinds of different surfaces in there instead of just a flat surface. So I'm going to take this core Imbo 3D gel. It is a super stiff, clear texture gel. But I am going to mix a tiny bit of these D-gel whipped cream colors in, the bright green and the light blue, because everything about this nail is keeping things translucent. These are too opaque to use on their own. I just want a hint of color. I just want milky colors in there as the base. And you need very little of the colors. And I'm probably doing at least double the amount of clear to color. But, we're just winging it. You just want to make sure it's milky. You want a tiny bit of the color in there. I feel like it does something other than just doing white. And keep in mind, I'm mixing these little amounts because I'm really just doing a single nail here right now. So also that. And if you don't have these gels, another way I was doing it is these Macart polygels. This is a set. The 2 colors that we need come in this set on Amazon, but they are a little gooey for what I need it to do. And so the texture in the end, it kind of wasn't stiff enough for what we needed. But in a pinch, like I did some of the nails with that. It's just easy to overdo it with them. And they're a little more opaque. So in the end, I kind of swapped it out. But just so you know. Now we're just going to take our pre-mixed colors and we're going to pretend we're a, modern contemporary painter. Or maybe, who is that? Gerhard Richter does all the palette knife paintings. And we are just going to take some sort of little palette knife kind of thing and just putting dollops. Or do you like cake references better? Pretend you're icing a little cake. But the important part is we need to leave some clear space. Like I probably almost overdid it on this nail. The important thing to notice while I'm doing this, none of this is sticking up off of the nail a lot. We can actually do a pretty thin nail and still get these different layers and textures. And that's all I'm doing of the blue and green. And I don't know if I can describe this properly, but anything that's mushing out from your little palette knife, you want that to stay a thin razory line. Those blobs, you don't want a big blob because it starts to look too noodly. You can also do a little base layer before we even did this of some Aurora glitter. It will add some shimmer. It's just not required. You don't really need it. I'm also sorry to say I cannot tell you where to get that palette knife. I've had it for years and I love it. You can maybe alter a silicone sculpting tool. Okay, next weird step. We're going in with the Macart Sculpted Gel Paint. I like this because it is not as stiff a texture as the first stuff we used. And we are basically just going to add more texture over the blue and green texture because we just want all kinds of nooks and crannies so that the light can keep catching. But now we need to keep the transparency because our chromes are going to go on all of this. And I'm sparing you most of it because I do this with my phone and the auto tracking is terrible on it, as you can tell. And I feel like this is getting worse. And I haven't invested in a camera yet. I'm just doing the same kind of dolloping that we did with the blue and green. And then we got to cure that for 60 seconds. And we are on to our chrome layers. Now I am going to go in with the Nail Thoughts Chrome It because we've not covered the whole nail yet. So this is just ensuring that the chrome will stick to every surface on the nail. And I'm only stippling this on because I don't want to get rid of any of the texture. So be very careful with that. To go back for a second, one of the reasons we used the slightly softer texture, clear texture gel in the last step is because the super stiff texture gel, sometimes when you're using it for this type of work, especially if you're doing chrome over it, it leaves really pointy peaks and things that are just going to snag everything. So that's the only reason I switched to a different clear texture gel. Now we're going to cure the Chrome It for 30 seconds and do our chromes. We've got your Mystic Pearl. We've got your Mermaid Mist. We've got your Stardust Shimmer. We've got some Fairy Floss. And then good old faithful, my lovely Aurora Beam, which is really the foundation chrome of the nail. There are substitutes you can use. This is what I have. Blanc from Sweeties has some good variety of pinks and greens. It's the Aurora Beam that's a little harder to find. Now, this is Mermaid Mist. It's not Peacock. This is just a dead powdered dupe for Kokoist Liquid Peacock Chrome. These are all NailMartUSA chromes, by the by, which I also have a coupon code for. Them or Sweeties, it's Sparkle 10. So I like to start, I just do a tiny area of pink in the middle just for some warmth and glow. And the majority of, like I said, of this is going to be the Aurora Beam. I think it's super important. I think it gives the flash that you need. The majority of all of the nails I did, I was only using Aurora Beam. I only kind of started doing the little dappling of chromes towards the end. So you could only do Aurora Beam if you wanted, but I kind of liked what this was giving me. So the Aurora Beam is a lot of places on there. And then I kind of liked on the edges doing, this is a deeper green. And so I kind of saved the edges for that. And if you want to go a different direction, you could, the ones on that bottom row of that double row of finished nails, that's a mellow orange. That's why I have that Mermaid Mist one out, or whatever that was called, Mystic Pearl. That was the orange I used as the base for that. So the chromes can start to change the look of the opal for you. So you notice I didn't use every color I had out, but those were colors I have used and they all work well. I didn't use the blue on this one. You know, it's a tiny nail. Sometimes you need to pick a few and go with it. But the oranges and blues work nice too. Now, the reason I went with chromes in the end for a lot of the color is because we are going to put cat eye. Don't worry. We're not leaving that out. But sometimes that flattened it. In the end, that came more up to the surface, that the cat eye effect, instead of the light going into it and hitting off of all the weird clear and milky textures that the chromes kind of do. If that makes any sense. All that being said, now it's time for our cat eye gels. So I used the light topaz a lot from the Ungoo. Now this is from Sweeties. These are powders and you just mix them with a clear gel. This is the closest I've found to the Gowie 3331, my favorite blue cat eye that does not have any tint to it. But these are sell out all the time. So, good luck. Also, and then for the brighter, more intense blue that also doesn't have a tint to it, I'm using the Miro from their Mixing Mag little set, which is nice, number 4. That's it. That's all. Can you believe that? That's all I'm using for cat eye on a nail. It's a travesty. Oh, I do put a tiny little bit of a purple that also does not have any tint to it. But you need to be very careful with the cat eyes that you pick, because you do not want anything to darken the nail and gray out. That's where it starts to kind of look blah. So I'm only doing some little sections and doing the same kind of thing. And I'm not paying attention to all of the textures. I want it to go over several of the texture areas. But again, kind of that same small brushwork blob kind of feeling. And then flash cure each one. And we're only going to do a couple spots. We're not covering the whole nail with cat eye because, again, we need the transparency to stay. And now we're going to add a little different kind of flash just to keep things interesting. This is from that set from Amazon with the holographic sheets. And I just have some like pinching shears that do little scallopy shapes. So you just want some, I'm doing like one kind of larger shape, which is still like a tiny area. It's just about creating a variety of different types of flashes. And just try to find a couple natural looking spots where your little snippets can fit in the nail. Okay, and that is what we have. We've just got 3 little spots with that extra little hollow green flash. And now I am going to go back in with my blue cat eye, and I just want to partially cover the edge of the larger green piece just to blend things better. And that's what we have so far. Okay, this is our last step before we top coat. This is what brings it all together. So even if some of your stuff was looking a little less homogeneous than you'd like, we are going to clean this with rubbing alcohol only because we are going to go in and do a very light filing, and I just don't want to gum up my file. And I'm really only trying to get rid of some of the highest peaks because that's going to take off a little bit of the cat eye and the chrome in those spots, and then that's going to give us more basically like the space between, blinds with light shining through. That's going to give us those clear little thin strips there so light can go back into that nail. And this is why I said back earlier in the tutorial that this is why you want those lines, the raised textures, thin. Because we don't want this at the end to have these thick lines because it starts to look less opal-like and more just like a texture nail. This is one where I didn't have enough texture going in different directions. And also my smush, the extra smushes from my dollops were a little too thick. So it's a cool looking nail, but it's verging on like not really opal. This is really more what we want. The blue and green, we kind of did the dollops vertically, I guess. And then when I went back in with the clear in the beginning, we're kind of doing a cross hatching in the directions across the blue and green, which is why we're getting so many reflective areas. Now, also another option, you can go in with just some very clear tinted gels, this good light blue, 2 different shades of blue. These are from the More Glasting collection. I didn't really need it on this one. I did do that on some other ones. Like this is one that I did. So maybe you do even less cat eye and you do more just a little bit of tinting on top of the chrome instead of cat eye. So like I said, it's very versatile. There's a lot of different directions you can go. Okay, back to the nail at hand. Make sure you clean off your nail with rubbing alcohol after we have lightly filed. We are now going to go in with a foil tack gel. I'm going to use the Gen B gum gel. It has a nice thin consistency. The Macart foil tack gel works as well. Mine's just getting a little thicker because it's older. I've used it a lot. And with the foil tack gels, just make sure you're doing a thin coat, because I feel like sometimes if this coat is too thick, it can make the nail not last as long. It's easier to kind of start picking at it. And you do want to cure that for 60 seconds. And now we have our plain holographic rainbow transfer film. And we are just going to do that over the entire surface of the nail. The super shiny side is what you want up. The slightly hazy side is what goes towards the nail. And just use your fingers and fingernails to kind of try to get it into what's left of the sort of, the wavy texture we still have on the nail, so that we're getting the holographic rainbow effect everywhere. And that's what we have. And so this guy is ready to be top coated, and we are done. Now, while we are looking at this, I just want to show you how thin we were able to keep this nail. That's pretty good for this much stuff going on in there. So this is just to show you, you really don't want your texture stuff too high off the nail. You don't need it to be. You're just going to make extra work for yourself and a clunkier, chunkier nail. If you would like, you could always go in with a clear builder base to kind of build up and get your nail smooth, because we do still have wavy, texture on it. I like the Zombie King High. Look, I'm getting better at saying it. It only took 8 videos. I'm just going to go in with this. I like it a lot. It's weirdly thin, but somehow stays put, but also self-levels. I use it all the time. And I like to kind of hold the nail upside down on one like this, where we're trying to really get a nice rounded shape when we haven't created a nice rounded shape. And you can always do, if you need to, a second coat, because you may still have some larger divots in there, like I did on this one. So, you do your first coat, get it started, and then you can kind of go in, and I like to call it playing the extremes. So you don't just keep doing full coats, like you could go in, you could do a light file so that you are getting the extreme high points down a little bit, but not going into the artwork areas. And then you can also fill some of the extreme divots to then you're getting everything, those extremes to meet in the middle, so that you're not getting the nail unnecessarily thick, but you are also not ruining all of the art layers we've just spent time doing. And there is our finished opal nail. We did it. It is a pretty thin nail for all of that depth and flash and variation that we are getting in there. I also really like the little bit of pink chrome in the middle. I think that adds just enough of the other little flashy colors that happen in opal. And here's a grouping of, I think, my 4 favorites. And it's going to take you a while potentially to get this. There's a lot of stinkers in there amongst the ones that I like. So just fair warning. because it's a weird thing to kind of get down. You really need to keep that open, clear space. You need the weird cross-hatching textures, but some that are milky, some that are clear, the mixing of chromes, blah, blah, blah. You just watched this. You know what I'm talking about. But anyway, there you go. I finally did the opal nail. I am so glad this is done.